I found blonde hair in our shower. Not mine, not his. So I secretly swapped the shampoo for hair removal cream. What happened next destroyed our marriage and stunned the entire public. Sometimes the smallest things can change our lives forever. A single blonde hair, resting against the white porcelain of a shower drain. Not mine. Not his. Just there. Staring back at me like an unwelcome truth I'd been avoiding for years. I'm Paulina. I'm 60 years old. And this is the story of how I found my voice again after decades of silence. How a desperate act of revenge led to public scandal, the end of my marriage, and unexpectedly, to the most beautiful chapter of my life. What you're about to hear might shock you. It might make you question what you would do in my place. But most importantly, I hope it reminds you that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to rediscover who you are, and to find love again. Even when you think those days are long behind you. This is my story, and it begins with that single blonde hair. For the past 35 years, I've lived with my husband Johnny in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Austin, Texas. Our little ranch-style house sits on a tree-lined street not far from Zilker Park. Visitors often comment on how idyllic it is, almost too perfect. A manicured front lawn with rose bushes I've tended for decades. Pristine white window frames that Johnny repainted every few years. A house that looks like something out of a real estate magazine. But behind the facade, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Johnny and I got married young. I was 25, he was 28. Back then, I was convinced we were meant to be. He was handsome, ambitious, with dark hair and eyes that crinkled when he smiled. I fell hard and fast. Our wedding was a small ceremony in the local church of my hometown in rural Texas. All our relatives were there, including my daughter Cynthia, who was only 5 at the time. Her father had left us when she was just a baby, and Johnny was the only real dad she'd ever known. I remember thinking, this is what happiness feels like, and it will last forever. The forever part held up, at least on paper. But in reality, it's been different for a long time now. Johnny works in the film industry as a production manager. He's constantly on the go, on location, late nights, receptions, meetings. At first, it thrilled me. His energy, the stories he'd tell from the set, the way his face would light up talking about his work. Over the years, though, I started to wonder more and more if that world was driving us apart. I'm much more of a homebody. I worked as a school librarian until I retired last year. Now I spend my days gardening, reading, and having weekly lunch dates with Cynthia, who's 40 now and works as a teacher at the elementary school I used to work at. Cynthia and I have always been close. When she was little, it was just the two of us against the world until Johnny came along. She was the flower girl at our wedding, tossing rose petals with such seriousness, her little forehead creased in concentration. I still have a photo of that moment on our mantelpiece. When Johnny became part of our lives, he embraced Cynthia completely. He taught her to ride a bike, helped her with homework, and cheered at her graduations. For many years, we were truly a family. Now Cynthia has her own life, her own home across town, but she still makes time to see me every week. Our relationship is something I've always treasured, a constant in a world that sometimes feels like it's moving too fast. She's the one person who knows me completely, my fears, my joys, my disappointments. Or at least, I thought she did. You see, there are some things I've never told Cynthia. About the loneliness that's crept into my marriage over the years. About the way Johnny and I have become like polite roommates, sharing a house but rarely connecting. About the nights I lie awake wondering if this is all there is. Our marriage is a mix of closeness and distance. We still laugh sometimes. We share habits and routines built over decades. But something vital is missing. A sense of ease. An unshakable trust. The kind I once imagined we'd have forever. That Saturday morning, I woke up earlier than Johnny. Sunlight was streaming through the curtains, casting bright stripes on our bedroom wall. I lay still for a while, listening to his quiet breathing, wondering if he ever lay awake thinking about us the way I did. I eventually got up, put on my robe, the soft blue one Cynthia had given me for Christmas, and went to the kitchen. The smell of coffee filled the room as the machine hummed to life. Small rituals that have grounded me for years. While I waited, I scrolled through my phone. A text from Aisha, my best friend since we taught at the same school 20 years ago. Hey, how's your movie star doing? Phone in hand again? Come to the farmer's market with me today. You need a distraction. She always called Johnny a movie star, even though he wasn't one, only in the sense that he worked among them. Aisha had often hinted that she didn't trust him. Too many pretty colleagues. Too many nights away, she'd say. I'd always brushed it off. But that morning, with a fresh cup of coffee in hand, those doubts gnawed at me again. Morning. I finally heard Johnny say from the hallway. He came into the kitchen groggy, in only his shorts, and grabbed his phone first thing. Morning. I replied, trying to sound normal. Everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine, he answered, staring at his screen. Just have to check some emails real quick. The shoot in New York was exhausting. Everything always piles up. Of course, I said. But inside I was thinking, always that phone, always that work. He must have noticed my tone because he looked up. What? Nothing. Paulina, he sighed. We've been over this. I'm not doing this to ignore you. It's my job. I forced a smile. I know. I'm just going to clean the bathroom real quick. Cleaning again? He laughed briefly, shaking his head. You're always cleaning something. It's Saturday morning. Can't we just relax? Someone has to do it. I said, my voice stiffer than I intended. Let's just have breakfast together in a bit. As I started cleaning the bathroom, moving mechanically through a routine I'd performed thousands of times, something caught my eye, and there it was. A blonde hair in our shower. Thin light, not mine and certainly not Johnny's. In that moment, everything I had only vaguely felt before, mistrust, uncertainty, distance, suddenly became real. A piece of evidence, small and inconspicuous, but sharp as a knife. I stared at the hair in my hand as if I'd found evidence of a crime. Thin, almost translucent in the light, but definitely blonde. My breathing quickened. I have gray hair that I've been coloring chestnut brown for years. Johnny's hair is silver at the temples but was always black. We live alone. I felt my face grow hot under my rubber gloves. I held the hair up, looked at it one more time, then quickly threw it in the trash can, as if I could erase it from my mind too. But the image was seared into my brain. Paulina. Johnny called from the kitchen. Is everything okay in there? Yes, I called back too quickly, my voice higher than usual. Everything's fine. A few seconds later, he was in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, hair still messy from sleep. You seem off this morning. I forced myself to appear calm. I've fine. Just doing a quick clean. He took a step closer, studying me. You're pale. Don't you want to sit down instead? I forced a smile. No, it's okay. I'll be done in a minute. Johnny studied me for another moment, then raised an eyebrow. Okay, but please don't stress yourself out with cleaning so much. You really overdo it sometimes. It just has to be done, I replied, wiping the shower wall, right where the blonde hair had been stuck moments ago. He placed his cup on the edge of the sink and put a hand on my shoulder. Paulina, it's the weekend. Come on, let's have breakfast. I looked up at him. There was something warm and familiar in his dark eyes. But at the same time, there was that distance that had been making me so uneasy in recent months. In a minute, I mumbled. I'll be done in a second. At the breakfast table, the mood was strange. Johnny scrambled eggs, humming to himself as if everything was normal. I sat with my coffee cup, watching his every move, the ease with which he moved around our kitchen, as if there was nothing to hide. So, he began as he put the pan on the table. I thought we could go for a walk in Zilker Park today. Just the two of us. Unwind a bit. Sounds great, I said automatically. But my thoughts immediately drifted. Just the two of us? Or has someone else been here recently? I reached for the salt shaker, but put it back down when I noticed my hands were trembling slightly. Johnny noticed it too. Are you okay? Yeah, of course, I said, trying to sound casual. Just a little tired, that's all. He put his fork down. You seem tense. Is something wrong? I took a deep breath. It was now or never, I thought. But how do you say something like that? Hey, I just found blonde hair in our shower. Can you explain that? Instead, I asked, hey, did you take a shower yesterday evening after I had already gone to bed? He blinked, looking confused. Yeah, why? No reason. I tried to sound casual. It just occurred to me that the bathroom was so humid this morning. Huh. He picked up his fork again, chewing thoughtfully. Yeah, it was late. I was sweaty from the drive back from New York. I nodded, staring at my scrambled eggs but barely eating anything. After a while, I asked, "And how was New York?" "Stressful as always," he replied with a shrug. "Long days, chaotic crew. But at least the premiere was well attended. The press was there too." "Did you see any colleagues you already knew?" I asked, trying to sound overly casual. He laughed quietly. "Colleagues? Why are you asking like that?" "Just curious." He put his fork down, looking at me intently. "Paulina, if something is on your mind, just say it. We've been married for 35 years. I can tell when something is bothering you." I forced another smile. "I've fine. Really?" He studied me for another moment, then slowly nodded. "All right. But you know you can talk to me about anything." "Can I?" I thought to myself. After breakfast, he cleared the plates while I stayed at the table, staring into space. The blonde hair wouldn't leave me alone. The longer I thought about it, the less I could dismiss it as a coincidence. Images formed in my head. Another woman in our shower, laughing as Johnny hands her my shampoo. Blonde, confident. A stranger using the bathroom I've cleaned for 35 years. My throat tightened at the thought. As Johnny put the plates in the dishwasher, he said, "You look like your mind is a million miles away." I forced a calm tone. "I just have a lot on my mind. Work, Cynthia, Aisha. All kinds of things." He nodded, accepting my explanation. But I knew that from that moment on, I would start looking more closely. At him. At us. At the life we'd built together. And the truth I might find would change everything. The days after finding the blonde hair felt strange, like walking on thin ice. On the surface, our daily routine was the same. Johnny worked a lot, made phone calls, wrote emails, and left for appointments. In the evenings, we sat together at the table, ate dinner, and made small talk. Just like we had for years. But for me, every sentence, every movement, every little gesture had taken on a new meaning. I started noticing things I'd overlooked before. I noticed that Johnny had recently started placing his phone face down on the table. Before, it would be lying face up, and I could see when a message came in. Now it remains hidden. I noticed he stayed in the bathroom longer in the evenings. The water would run. The fan would hum. Sometimes I heard him humming a tune. Before I hadn't cared. Now I wondered who he was showering so thoroughly for, when I was already in my pajamas with my night cream on. I noticed he was shaving more often, even on days when he was supposedly just doing office work at home. All small things. Maybe coincidences. Maybe not. At night, I lay awake beside him. He slept deeply, his breathing steady, occasionally letting out a soft snore. I stared into the darkness of our bedroom and wondered if I was going crazy, if I was looking for something that wasn't there, or if, on the contrary, I had been looking away for far too long. When Cynthia stopped by for our weekly lunch 2 days later, she immediately sensed something was off. "Mom, you're a million miles away," she said, reaching across the kitchen table to touch my hand. "What's going on?" I looked at my daughter, her kind eyes so much like mine, the worry lines forming between her brows. For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything. About the hair, about my suspicions, about the cold space growing between Johnny and me. But I couldn't bring myself to burden her with it. "Just tired, sweetheart," I said instead. "Didn't sleep well last night." She studied me, unconvinced. "Is everything okay between you and Johnny?" My heart skipped a beat. Was it that obvious? Had she noticed something I hadn't? "Of course," I said too quickly. "Why do you ask?" Cynthia shrugged. "I don't know. You just seem distant lately. Both of you. Last time I was over for dinner, there was this tension I couldn't quite put my finger on." I busied myself with pouring more tea, avoiding her eyes. "Marriage has its ups and downs, you know that. We're fine." "Mom," she said gently, "you can talk to me. About anything." I managed a smile. "I know, sweetie. And I would. But there's really nothing to talk about." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. But how could I tell her that her stepfather, the man who'd helped raise her, might be betraying me? How could I share suspicions that I wasn't even sure of myself? Later that day, I texted Aisha. Time for coffee? I need a distraction. She replied immediately. Always. Daily grind for PM. The cafe was crowded as usual. The smell of fresh pastries hung in the air. Tourists lined up at the counter. Aisha was already sitting by the window, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun, her bright scarf adding a splash of color to her outfit. There you are, she said as I sat down. You look tense. I waved her off, forcing a smile. Too much on my mind. Too much on your mind? She raised an eyebrow. Or too much, Johnny? I said nothing, taking a sip of my cappuccino. All right, she said after a while. You don't have to tell me, but you know I can see it in your face. I stared into my cup, stirring the foam with my spoon. It's nothing concrete, just little things. Little things, she repeated. I nodded. You know, when you suddenly start noticing things you never paid attention to before. A different cologne coming home late, a phone lying face down on the table. She said nothing, but I felt her gaze steady on me. Maybe I'm just imagining it. I continued, my voice quieter. Maybe I'm seeing ghosts. Aisha took a sip of her coffee, slowly setting the cup down. Ghosts are usually not ghosts, she murmured. Sometimes it's just what's been in the room the whole time. I looked up. You mean? She shrugged. I don't mean anything. I'm just saying you should look closer. We fell silent. Outside, crowds of people passed by with shopping bags in their arms, their laughter and voices creating a jumble of sounds. I felt like I was behind a pane of glass, separated from that normalcy. You know him, Aisha said finally, her voice softer. You can tell when someone is different, when they suddenly have secrets. You're not stupid, Paulina. I nodded, but the lump in my throat only grew bigger. On the way home, I walked through the narrow streets, the sounds of the city all around me, but it was quiet inside my mind. Aisha's words echoed. You can tell when someone is different. And indeed, I started to register everything more consciously. How Johnny smelled of a different soap when he came home, one we'd never bought. How he sometimes smiled absently when he looked at his phone. How he chose his clothes more carefully than before, even when he was just going to the office. I said nothing. I just collected evidence. Every detail, every deviation. An invisible log was being compiled in my head. And the more I saw, the clearer it became. It was no longer just my imagination. Something was going on. And I had to find out what. It started with another small thing that I almost overlooked. My shampoo. I've been using the same brand for years. A thick, dark liquid with a herbal scent that always gave me a sense of stability. Johnny didn't particularly like the smell. He'd often tease me about smelling like a walking herb garden. He had his own neutral body wash. Always the same one. We had this division for years. My shelf. His shelf. Like two small territories in our bathroom that we never questioned. But one evening when I was showering, I noticed that the bottle was lighter than it should be. I shook it, and sure enough, it was at least a third emptier than it should have been. I had just bought it last week. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe I had underestimated how much I'd used. Maybe I had been wasteful without noticing. But over the next few days, I paid closer attention. I always put the bottle back in the same spot, subtly marking the level with my fingernail on the plastic. And then after 3 days, it was clear. The shampoo was getting emptier without my help. A shiver ran down my spine. Johnny hated that smell. He had never used my shampoo. Never even tried it once in all our years together. Why would he suddenly use mine? It was a foreign pattern. Someone else had to have been here. I stood in the bathroom one morning, the bottle in my hand, staring at the contents that were dwindling far too quickly. The light of the fluorescent lamp reflected on the plastic. My heart pounded in my temples. She was here, whoever she is. She stood here in my shower, washed her hair, while I was perhaps sitting in the living room or lying in bed. She used my shampoo. The thought squeezed my throat. It was no longer just loose blonde hair that could still be explained away. This was more intimate, more direct. Someone had taken my place, touched my things, used my products. I felt like a stranger in my own home. During the day, I tried not to let anything show. Johnny worked as always, made calls, laughed at some joke on the other end of the line. But I saw him differently now. Every time he walked past me, I smelled him, trying to catch a hint of my shampoo. But there was nothing. He wasn't using it. So who was? That evening, I met Aisha again. Not planned this time, but because she called me out of the blue. Feel like a glass of wine? I'm in town. I agreed, simply because I couldn't bear to carry it all by myself anymore. We sat in a small bar on Congress Avenue, with dim lighting, candles on the tables, and the conversations of other guests creating a soft background hum. I told her about the shampoo, cautiously, almost shamefully, as if it were a ridiculous detail. She listened, arms crossed, her expression serious. So, she said after a while, either he's using it secretly, or someone else used it. Exactly, I mumbled. And you don't think it was him? I shook my head. He can't stand the smell. He never touched it. Never. She took a sip of wine, slowly set the glass down. Then you know what that means. I was silent. There was a storm raging inside me, but I couldn't put it into words. Paulina, Aisha said, her voice softer. You're not looking for signs anymore. You've already found them. Her words echoed as I held the glass in my hands. I wanted to disagree, wanted to say that it could all have a harmless explanation, but I couldn't find one. Later, alone in bed, I stared into the darkness. Johnny lay next to me, sleeping deeply and steadily. I heard his breathing, felt the warmth of his shoulder against mine. And yet I felt more alone than ever before. The shampoo, the hair, the late nights. The evidence was forming a pattern that I couldn't ignore. And for the first time, a decision formed inside me, dark and silent. If I couldn't get the truth the easy way, I would find it myself. The thought wouldn't let me go. Day after day, I saw the shampoo bottle getting emptier. An invisible piece of evidence that no one but me seemed to notice. I felt like a detective in my own home, and at the same time, like I was losing my mind. At night, I lay awake, turning over the possibilities. I could confront Johnny directly. I could ask him openly, straightforwardly. But what if he brushed it off? What if he made me out to be paranoid? Then I would be left alone with my uncertainty, with no proof. I needed clarity, and I needed it in a way that he couldn't deny. The idea came to me suddenly, almost like a joke at first. What if someone else is using my shampoo, and I tamper with it so that it leaves a mark that can't go unnoticed? I laughed quietly to myself, shaking my head. But the thought remained. It gnawed at me. And finally, it was no longer a joke, but a plan. The next morning, I went to the drugstore on Congress Avenue. It was a normal gray weekday. The shelves were fully stocked. Women with shopping baskets moved up and down the aisles. Men stood perplexed in front of the razor section. I pushed my shopping cart as usual, grabbing cleaning supplies, toothpaste, a new pack of cotton pads. And then I stopped in front of the shelf with hair removal creams. I hesitated, feeling my face grow hot. What was I doing? I looked around, almost as if someone could read my thoughts. No one was paying attention to me. A woman was looking for shampoo for dry hair a few feet away. A man was putting 2 bottles of body wash in his basket. I reached for a tube of hair removal cream, shoving it between the laundry detergent and paper towels in my cart. My heart was racing as if I had stolen something forbidden. At home, I waited until Johnny disappeared into his office for a conference call. Then I went into the bathroom, closed the door behind me, and placed the shampoo bottle on the sink. I took the tube of hair removal cream out of the shopping bag, carefully opened the cap. The smell was sharp, chemical, completely different from the familiar herbal scent of my shampoo. With trembling hands, I poured about half of the liquid into the shampoo bottle, carefully, slowly, so nothing would spill. I mixed it, shook it, until the consistency looked somewhat the same. Then I put the bottle back in its place. I washed my hands, wiped the sink, as if every trace would give me away. My heart was pounding so loudly. I was sure Johnny could hear it from his office. When I was done, I leaned against the cold tiles and took a deep breath. Later, at dinner, I looked at him as he ate, as he casually talked about his new project. I nodded, asked questions, and laughed at the right moments. No one would have guessed that I had just done something that transformed me into a different woman. No longer the understanding wife, but a woman on a quest for the truth. But inside there was a storm. What if I had gone too far? What if my suspicions were right, and she comes back? What if I suddenly got a certainty that I couldn't live with? That night, I lay awake while Johnny slept beside me. I stared at the ceiling and waited for what was about to happen. It was as if I had set a trap, and now I was standing next to it, motionless, waiting for someone to step into it. The shampoo bottle stood in its place, outwardly unremarkable as always, but I knew what was lurking inside. And that knowledge followed me with every trip to the bathroom, with every glance at the shower, with every sound that came from the hallway. The first 2 days, nothing happened. Or rather, nothing that I noticed. I checked the bottle almost obsessively, lifting it, turning it, carefully shaking it. The contents seemed unchanged. Maybe no one had used it. Maybe it was over. But my heart beat faster every time Johnny went to shower. I would stand in the kitchen then, listening to the water, imagining him unscrewing the cap, massaging the foam into his hair. And at the same time I knew. He hated the smell. It wasn't his shampoo. So I waited. Not for him. For her. During those days, my daily life was like a shadow play. I worked on my garden, called Cynthia, made dinner, but everything happened mechanically, without real focus. In truth, my mind was only in the bathroom. In the evenings, I sat with Johnny on the sofa. We watched a TV show. He laughed at the right moments, made me popcorn, and put his arm around me. And I thought, maybe it really is just my imagination. Maybe she doesn't exist. Maybe I'm the one who's losing herself here. But then he would go to his office to check emails, and I would take the opportunity to check the bathroom. The same scene over and over. Me alone, the bottle in my hand, checking if it had gotten lighter. And then on the 4th day, it happened. It was afternoon. Johnny was supposedly at the office. I went into the bathroom, almost casually, and stopped. The bottle was clearly lighter. I lifted it up, feeling the difference. My fingernail mark, which I had set as a reference point, confirmed it. At least 2 finger widths were missing. My stomach clenched. Someone had used it. Someone had been here. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the bottle in my hand. The air was stuffy. I felt dizzy. This was no longer a vague feeling, no longer a hair that could be dismissed as a coincidence. This was concrete. She had been here in my bathroom, under my shower, with my shampoo, and now with hair removal cream on her head. I felt sick with excitement and dread. That night, I could barely sleep. I lay awake, listening to every sound. Johnny breathed calmly next to me. Turning once in his sleep, I stared into the darkness and imagined scenes. A foreign woman leaving our shower with a desperate scream. Handfuls of hair in her hands. I was startled by myself. What had I done? What if I had gone too far? And yet, a part of me felt stronger, more determined, as if I had regained control. I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. It started with a coincidence. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was fate that decided to lift the veil. It was a Thursday evening. I had the TV on in the background while I flipped through a gardening magazine. Johnny was, once again, not at home, supposedly for a long production meeting. I had long since gotten used to the fact that he was away more often than he was here. The news was on, and I was barely listening until a name suddenly came up that made me prick up my ears. Samantha Winters. Actress. Blonde. Flawless. One of those faces everyone knew from the big screen. I looked up and froze. She was on the screen, accompanied by camera flashes, in front of a premiere theater in Los Angeles. But she didn't look like she normally did. Her head was covered in a fashionable scarf, but I could see patches where her blonde hair should be. Thin spots. Gaps. Nothing like her usual flowing locks. The reporters were going wild, talking about a mysterious incident. A scandal behind the scenes. Samantha Winters seemed flustered, kept adjusting the scarf that kept slipping, and dodged every question with nervous laughter. My breath caught. My fingers froze on the magazine page. A thought flashed through my mind, so clear that it scared me. The shampoo. I couldn't look away. There she was, this woman, suddenly with patches of missing hair. And in that moment I knew, without a doubt, without any escape, she was the one. She had been in my bathroom. She had used my shampoo. The next few days were a blur of news, tabloids, and headlines. Samantha Winters with patchy hair. Coincidence or scandal? What's behind the actress's sudden hair loss? Photos everywhere. Samantha with a wig. Samantha with a headscarf. Samantha warding off the cameras with her hand. I flipped through the newspapers, stared at the pictures, and felt a mix of triumph, disgust, and fear. The truth was right in front of me. All of America could see it. Only Johnny said nothing. He came home late, seemed flustered, avoiding my gaze. His answers were shorter than usual. He talked quickly about work, as if to fill the silence with words. I watched him silently. There was an expression on his face that I recognized after 35 years of marriage. The struggle between guilt and concealment. And then one evening, we were at dinner when he suddenly stopped eating. His fork lay still on the plate, and he looked at me, long and searchingly. "Paulina," he began. Then he broke off. I met his gaze. "What?" I asked calmly, almost coldly. "Nothing," he mumbled and lowered his head. But I knew. He suspected that I knew. The next morning, there was a newspaper in the mailbox, with a photo of Samantha Winters on the front page. The article speculated whether her sudden hair loss had health-related reasons, or if there was malicious intent behind it. I took the newspaper, placed it pointedly on the kitchen table, right between our coffee cups. Johnny came in, saw it, and his hand froze in midair as he reached for the coffee pot. "Don't you know her?" I asked in an innocent tone. He looked at the photo, then at me. For a moment, his face was a mask, motionless, empty. Then he said, vaguely, "From the set. She's complicated." "I see." I nodded, took a sip of coffee, and let the silence between us grow until it became oppressively heavy. Two voices were fighting inside me. One said, "You did it. You brought the truth to light." The other whispered, "What if you went too far? What if this scandal becomes bigger than you can handle?" But even stronger than the doubts was the certainty. My marriage as it was no longer existed. It was as if a storm was sweeping over the country. A storm of headlines, photos, and rumors. Within a few days, Samantha Winters was on everyone's lips. The newspapers were in a frenzy. Samantha Winters shocks with patchy hair. Artistic statement or illness? Sabotage on set? Insiders speak of intrigues. Star with a twist of fate. What's really behind it? On TV, they kept showing the same images. Samantha, pale, with a scarf or wig. On the red carpet, her head bowed, ignoring reporters' questions. On talk shows, celebrities and experts discussed possible causes. Doctors spoke of autoimmune diseases. Stylists of brave fashion statements. But I knew the truth. Me alone. I sat on the sofa in the evening, remote in hand, while Johnny stared silently at the news from the armchair across from me. His face was expressionless, his jaw tense. I watched him from the corner of my eye. Every time Samantha came into view, something flickered in his gaze. Guilt, recognition, perhaps even fear. "Crazy, isn't it?" I said casually, as if it were just another TV evening. All her hair falling out in patches so suddenly. He cleared his throat, reaching for his glass. "Yeah, terrible." "Do you think she—" I left the sentence open, looking at him. "I have no idea," he mumbled. "I barely know her." A sentence that cuts through the air like a knife. Barely. After all we had been through. After my bathroom, my shower, my shampoo. I just nodded and smiled thinly. Of course. The next day, I was at the coffee shop, and even there, people were talking about Samantha. Two older women in front of me were whispering, "Such a pretty young woman. And then that? Must be some kind of illness. Poor thing." "Or a PR stunt," the other replied. "They do everything for attention these days." I bit my lip, staying silent. The truth was burning on my tongue, but I kept it to myself. For now. But the satisfaction was crumbling. Because as much as it satisfied me that this woman was now publicly exposed, it also troubled me. I saw her in newspapers, on TV, and sometimes in quiet moments, I imagined her face when she must have realized what had happened. Panic. despair, shame. A part of me screamed, "She deserved it." Another whispered, "You went too far." At home, there was silence. Johnny avoided me, stayed in his office longer, made phone calls behind closed doors. When we passed each other, his gaze was fleeting. He talked about work constantly, as if he wanted to create a barrier of trivialities between us. But I let him. I listened, nodded, asked no questions, because I knew that the truth had long since stood between us like an uninvited guest, poisoning everything. On Sunday morning, when I got the newspaper from the mailbox, Samantha was on the front page again. This time, it was the New York Times, not some tabloid. Hollywood star loses hair in patches. Film industry speculates about set sabotage. I stood in the kitchen, placed the newspaper right in the middle of the table, and waited. Johnny came in, poured himself coffee, and his gaze immediately fell on the front page. A barely noticeable twitch crossed his face, and he grabbed the cup as if it had suddenly become a lifeline. I watched him silently, my hands wrapped around my own coffee cup. Say something, I thought. Admit it. Or lie. But do something. But he did nothing. He remained silent. And in that silence, something inside me snapped. If he wouldn't talk, then I would. And not just privately. I would make the truth public. Just as he had ignored me for years, I would now make sure all of America saw what was really behind his work. It was as if I had been holding my breath for days. Since the hair, since the shampoo, since the headlines about Samantha Winters, I had been silent. I had watched Johnny pretend that everything was normal, as if 35 years of marriage could just be covered up with silence. But inside, something had risen up in me, bigger than fear, stronger than shame. The will to hear the truth. That Tuesday evening, I couldn't take it anymore. Johnny was sitting in the living room, in his favorite armchair, a glass of red wine beside him. The lamp cast a warm light that made him look almost peaceful. A script was lying open on the coffee table, but I knew he wasn't really reading it. His fingers were flipping pages, but his eyes were empty. I stood in the doorway, heard my heart pounding, and said, "We need to talk." He looked up, surprised, almost annoyed. "Paulina, please, not now. I'm tired." "No." My voice trembled, but I stood firm. "Right now." Slowly, he put the script aside. "What's wrong?" I stepped inside, sat down across from him, and felt my hands grow clammy. I clenched them into fists so he wouldn't see the trembling. "For weeks," I began, "something has been wrong between us. You're different. Distant. Secretive." I took a deep breath. And then I found blonde hair in our shower. Hair that isn't ours. He blinked. His face froze. Not a word. Just a brief, twitching muscle in his jaw. "Paulina," he spoke softly, as if to soothe me. "It's not what you think." I laughed dryly. "Not what I think. Johnny, I'm not blind. I saw my shampoo getting emptier and emptier. I know someone else was here. In my bathroom. In my shower." I grabbed the newspaper from the table, which I had placed there on purpose, and pushed it toward him. On the front page, Samantha Winters with a headscarf. The headline, "Star Loses Hair, Sabotage or Illness?" He stared at the picture, then at me. "Say it," I demanded, my voice now cuttingly clear. "Say it to my face. Be honest. Just once." He lowered his head, running both hands over his face. For a moment, only his breathing could be heard. Then he looked up, and in his eyes, there was something I hadn't seen in years. Fear. "It happened," he whispered. I felt a chill. I felt my hands trembling, my throat tightening. It happened. So simple, so easily said, as if it had been a mistake. A little slip-up. "How long?" I asked, my voice strained. He was silent. "How long?" I slammed my fist on the table. The glass rattled. He looked at me almost pleadingly, then lowered his eyes. "A few months." "A few months." I laughed bitterly. A few months ago she stood in my bathroom. I used my shampoo. I washed her hair in my shower while I was probably sitting in the living room. In my house. Tears burned in my eyes, but I held his gaze. "And you? You said nothing. You looked at me as if everything was fine. You lied to me day after day." He stood up, wanting to come to me, but I pulled back. Paulina, please. It was a mistake. A damned mistake. I didn't want this. I love you. Love. My voice cracked. You dare to even say that word? Love is trust. Love is respect. Love means I shouldn't have to feel like a stranger in my own home. He reached out his hand to me, but I tore myself away. 35 years, Johnny. I believed in you. I trusted you. I gave you my life. And for what? So you could replace me with some actress because she's blonde and glamorous and half my age. He swallowed, his eyes glistening. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Just happened. I felt the tears running down my face. It just happened that you lied to me. It just happened that you crushed my heart. It just happened that you turned our marriage into a sham. A fight followed that lasted for hours. I screamed. He was silent. Then he screamed. And I was silent. We threw things at each other that we could never take back. I heard myself say words I never thought possible. You're a stranger to me. I don't recognize you anymore. 35 years wasted. And in between moments when we both cried, when we looked at each other and recognized what had once been there in each other's eyes. But it was only a shadow, an echo. And an echo is not enough to save a marriage. The next day, I went to a law firm. A plain office downtown. Gray carpet. White walls. File folders on the shelves. The lawyer listened to me calmly as I spoke. It was hard for me to say the words. And yet it felt good. We'll file for divorce, she said matter-of-factly. And if you want, we can make sure the media knows your side of the story. I nodded, wiping my eyes. Yes, I want that. On the way home, in the crowded subway, I cried silently. Not loudly. Not visibly. Just quiet tears that ran down my cheeks. No one noticed. And maybe that was fitting. Because our marriage, our story, hadn't been noticed by anyone either. Except me. But as the city rushed past the windows, I felt something else emerging through the pain. A new clarity. It was over. And sometimes, an ending also means a new beginning. The morning I pulled the newspaper out of the mailbox, I felt as if I were holding a bomb. The headline jumped out at me. Affair, scandal, hair loss. The secret truth behind Samantha Winter's patchy hair. Below it, my name in black and white. Paulina Thompson, 60, wife of production manager Johnny Thompson, speaks out. My fingers trembled as I turned the pages. There it was. My story. My words. I've been silent for too long. You can't end 35 years of marriage with a lie. I want the truth to come out. I stared at the lines that had come from my mouth and felt a mix of emotions in my chest. On one hand, a sense of triumph. The truth was no longer just my dark secret. On the other, shame because the whole city could now read about the most painful chapter of my life. 2 days earlier, I had been sitting at a cafe on South Congress when Matthew Brooks stood in front of me. He was younger than I had imagined. Tall, with a dark coat and a gaze that immediately put me at ease. Not a curious, greedy look, as you might expect from a reporter, but serious, respectful, as if he wanted to reassure me. I hear you. All of you. Ms. Thompson. He extended his handshake firm, warm. Thank you for coming. I nodded, unsure, my hands clammy. My heart was racing. I had never confided such intimate things to a stranger before. We sat down at a small table in the corner. The cafe was full, a jumble of voices, the scent of pastries. I felt like I was in a bubble, separated from it all. You know, I've been writing about celebrities, scandals, and affairs for 15 years, Matthew began, his notepad in front of him. But I don't want to exploit your story. I want it to be told in your words. Something in me relaxed at his words. I nodded, took a deep breath, and started talking. I told him about that Saturday morning, about the blonde hair in the shower, about how I had wanted to ignore it at first, but how it had gnawed at me. I spoke of the nights I lay awake while Johnny breathed calmly beside me, not knowing if I was paranoid or finally waking up. I told him about the shampoo that got emptier and emptier, about my secret mark on the bottle, about the decision to put the hair removal cream in it. As I spoke, Matthew looked at me, calm, focused, with a seriousness that sometimes made me stop short. He took notes, but never frantically. He didn't interrupt. He just quietly asked for more detail when he needed to understand something better. And then, I said finally, my voice breaking. I was sitting in front of the TV, and there she was, Samantha Winters, with patches of missing hair. All of America was talking about it. And I knew she had stood in my shower. Tears ran down my face. I hadn't planned on crying, but it broke out of me. Matthew silently handed me a napkin. No face of pity, no feigned sympathy, just quiet presence. "Thank you for trusting me with this," he said after a long pause. "But you need to know, if we publish this, there's no going back. It's going to cause a stir. You'll face attacks, doubts, mockery, but also respect. Are you ready?" I wiped away my tears. "Yes," I whispered. "I am ready. I've been silent for too long." And now, 2 days later, I was sitting in my kitchen, the newspaper in my hand, my coffee untouched. I read the lines over and over. My name. My words. Public. A part of me rejoiced. I was no longer the silent wife in the background. I finally had a voice. Another part of me tensed up. Now everyone knew what had happened. My neighbors. The barista at the coffee shop. Maybe even people I hadn't seen since my teaching days. When I went to the coffee shop shortly after, I felt like people looked at me longer. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe not. The barista smiled friendly, but her eyes darted over my face longer than usual. 2 men whispered as I walked by. I pulled my scarf tighter around me, wishing I could be invisible. And at the same time, no, that's exactly what I didn't want anymore. I wanted to be seen, to be heard. That evening, my phone rang. It was Matthew. I hesitated, then finally picked up. "Miss Thompson." His voice was calm, warm. "I wanted to thank you. The article is out, and it's being widely discussed. But you know what? Many readers are writing that they see themselves in your story, that they want to be brave enough to stop being silent." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Are you serious?" "Yes," he said. "I often write about scandals that are empty, that are just for headlines. But your story, that's real. It has meaning." I held the phone to my ear, silent, and felt a pull in my chest. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel just anger or pain, but also something else, a kind of warmth, a feeling of being understood in those words. "Thank you," I finally whispered. "No," he replied. "Thank you." That night, I fell asleep with the newspaper on my nightstand. My name was plastered across the front page. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't just feel loss, but also the inkling that my life could begin anew. And maybe, just maybe, that new beginning had already started with one phone call. The days following the publication were chaotic. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends I hadn't heard from in years called, offering support. Neighbors brought casseroles, as if a death had occurred. Journalists asked for interviews. Talk shows invited me. I declined most of it. I had wanted the truth to come out, but I didn't want to become a public figure known only for scandal. The most difficult call came from Cynthia. She called early in the morning, her voice thick with emotion. "Mom," she said, "why didn't you tell me? I had to find out from the newspaper." "I didn't want to burden you," I replied softly. "And I wasn't sure myself until it was too late." "I could have helped you," she said. "You didn't have to go through this alone." "I know, sweetheart. I am sorry." There was a long silence. Then she spoke again, her voice firmer. "I'm coming over. Right now. And I'm staying with you for a few days. No arguments." A small smile formed on my lips. "Okay." When Cynthia arrived, she wrapped me in a hug so tight it nearly took my breath away. We sat at the kitchen table, drinking tea, and for the first time, I told her everything without filters. About the loneliness of the past years. About the doubt. About the fear of growing old and being replaced. She listened, sometimes squeezing my hand, sometimes wiping away a tear. And then she said something that touched me deeply. "You know, Mom, when I was little and Johnny came into our lives, I thought he was the hero of our story. But now I see, it was always you. You were the strong one. The brave one." I felt a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the tea. Johnny moved out that week. He packed his things quietly, avoiding my gaze. As he stood at the door, suitcase in hand, He tried one more time. "Paulina," he said, "this doesn't have to be the end. We could try counseling. I made a terrible mistake, but 35 years, that's not nothing." I looked at him, at the man I had loved, had built a life with, had trusted with everything. And I felt calm. "No," I said softly. "Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. They can only be released." He nodded, a glimmer of tears in his eyes, and then he was gone. That night, Cynthia and I sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, looking at the stars. It was a clear night, cool but not cold, with a gentle breeze. "What now?" she asked. I sighed, looking up at the vast sky. "I don't know. But for the first time in a long time, that feels okay. Not knowing." She squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Mom." The divorce papers were filed the next week. A straightforward process, surprisingly anticlimactic for the end of 3.5 decades together. The lawyer said it would be final within months. My life, divided into a neat before and after. As the legal proceedings moved forward, the media storm intensified. Samantha Winters finally spoke publicly. In a tearful interview, she admitted to the affair, but claimed ignorance about the hair removal cream. She painted herself as the victim, suggesting I was a vengeful older woman who couldn't accept that her husband had moved on. It stung hearing her twist the narrative. But surprisingly, I found I didn't care as much as I thought I would. The truth was out there. What others made of it was beyond my control. What I didn't expect was the wave of support that followed. Women my age wrote me letters. Younger women stopped me in the grocery store to thank me for standing up for myself. An older man at the pharmacy shook my hand and said I had given his sister the courage to leave her own unfaithful husband after 40 years. My story had struck a chord, not because of the scandal or the hair removal cream, but because I had refused to disappear silently. I had demanded to be seen, to be heard, to matter. Among the many calls and messages, one stood out. Matthew, checking in regularly, not as a reporter seeking a follow-up, but as someone genuinely concerned about my well-being. "How are you holding up?" he would ask, his voice warm through the phone. Taking it day by day, I would answer honestly. Our calls became a routine, a bright spot in the upheaval my life had become. He never pushed for more information, never treated me as a source. He just listened. And gradually, I found myself looking forward to his calls. One evening, he called while I was gardening, my hands deep in soil, planting new flowers in the beds that lined my front path. "I was wondering," he said, after we had chatted for a while, "if you might want to get coffee again sometime. Not for an interview or anything like that. Just coffee." I paused, a small seedling in my hand. Was I ready for this? For something new, whatever it might be? "I'd like that," I heard myself say, surprising myself with how true it felt. We met at the same cafe as before. This time there was no notepad, no recorder, no newspaper headline looming. Just two people, talking about books, films, the changing seasons. He told me about growing up in Vermont. I told him about my years teaching. Simple things. Normal things. As I walked home, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because I thought this might be the start of something romantic. He was younger than me, after all, and I was nowhere near ready for that, but because it reminded me that I could still connect with people. That I could still have conversations that weren't about scandal or divorce or betrayal. That night, I called Cynthia. "I think I might be okay," I told her. "I know you will be," she replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. The seasons changed. Fall turned to winter, then to spring. The pecan trees in Austin were in bloom, their delicate leaves catching the light. And I noticed that a new life was awakening in me, too. The divorce was now final. A matter-of-fact letter from the court. A pile of paper that sealed and ended 35 years of marriage. I had cried, yes. But it was no longer a breakdown. It was more of a quiet letting go. Johnny had disappeared from my life like a shadow. Sometimes I still saw his name in articles, film projects, premieres, the same world that had once connected us. But he no longer belonged to my world. I didn't know if he was still seeing Samantha. And for the first time, I truly didn't care. The media frenzy had died down. Samantha Winters had made a miraculous recovery. showing off a full head of blonde hair at movie premieres, extensions, the gossip column speculated. I rarely saw her picture anymore. When I did, I felt nothing. No triumph, no anger, just a neutral shrug. As for me, I have learned that you are stronger than you think. That even after deep breaks, you keep going. Sometimes more slowly, sometimes more cautiously, but always forward. During those months, I had seen more of Matthew. First through occasional phone calls, then coffee meetups that turned into long walks through Zilker Park, dinners at small restaurants where no one recognized us. He was 50, younger than me, yes, but not impossibly so. A widower with grown children. Kind eyes. A quiet laugh that I found myself wanting to hear more often. We were building something that was delicate. Unnamed. Not rushed. Sometimes I wondered where it could lead. But the beautiful thing was, I didn't have to know. For the first time in years, I was living in the now, not in a construct of future plans and expectations. You know, Matthew said one evening, as we walked along the river, the water reflecting the city lights. When I wrote your story, I never expected to become part of it. I smiled, tucking my arm through his. Life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it? He nodded, looking out over the water. I've interviewed hundreds of people and heard countless stories. But yours, there was something about your courage that stayed with me. Was it courage? I asked softly. Or just desperation? Both maybe, he replied. But choosing to stand up for yourself instead of fading away, that's always courage. I thought about his words long after we'd said goodnight. Was that what I had done? Chosen not to fade away? It hadn't felt like a choice at the time. More like a survival instinct. But looking back, I could see the moment when something inside me had refused to be invisible anymore. My relationship with Cynthia had deepened through all of this. She had seen me at my lowest and hadn't turned away. She had watched me rebuild myself and had celebrated each small victory. You're different now, Mom, she told me one Sunday as we prepared lunch together in my kitchen. A ritual we'd established in recent months. Different how? I asked, chopping vegetables for the salad. She considered for a moment, her hands working dough for biscuits. More, like you've shed something that wasn't really yours to begin with. I nodded slowly. I think for a long time, I was living someone else's version of who I should be. The supportive wife. The understanding partner. Always in the background. And now, I smiled, looking around at my kitchen. The bright yellow curtains I'd put up last month, the herbs growing in pots on the windowsill, the colorful ceramic mugs I'd bought at a local art fair. Small changes that represented something much bigger. Now I'm just Paulina. And that's enough. She wiped flour from her hands and hugged me, flour and all. It always was enough, Mom. You just couldn't see it. The house, once filled with memories of my life with Johnny, gradually transformed. I painted the living room a warm terracotta that Johnny would have hated. I rearranged furniture, donated clothes I'd kept only because he liked them, and planted flowers in the garden that were just for me. It was liberating, this reclaiming of space. This creation of a home that reflected who I was now, not who I had been as one half of a couple. Aisha visited often, bringing wine and laughter. I always told you that man was trouble, she'd say, pouring us each a glass. But I have to admit, I never imagined you'd become a national scandal over it. We'd laugh together, sitting on my newly upholstered sofa, and I'd marvel at how humor could grow in the cracks of what had once been pain. One evening, as spring was turning to summer, I sat on my porch, wrapped in a light shawl, a glass of wine in my hand. I looked out over the rooftops of Austin, where the sun was setting, painting the sky in pink and gold. The air was warm, filled with the scent of the jasmine I'd planted along the porch railing. Birds sang their evening songs. A gentle breeze stirred the wind chimes that Cynthia had given me for Mother's Day. And I thought of everything that lay behind me. Of the young woman who had said yes, with so much hope at 25. Of the nights I had doubted myself. At that moment I decided not to be silent anymore. I smiled to myself, feeling a profound sense of peace settle over me. It wasn't for nothing. Not a single day. Every moment, every year, every tear and every laugh had brought me here. To this porch, to this sunset, to this version of myself that I was finally getting to know and, surprisingly, to like. The doorbell rang, breaking my reverie. It was Matthew, right on time for our dinner plans. He stood on the steps, a bouquet of wildflowers in his hand, smiling up at me with those kind eyes that had become so familiar. "These reminded me of you," he said, offering the flowers. Bright, resilient, beautiful without trying to be. I felt a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the evening air. I took the flowers, their colors vibrant against my simple white dress. "Come in," I said. "Dinner's almost ready." As I put the flowers in water, I caught a glimpse of myself in the kitchen window. Gray hair I'd stopped coloring, laugh lines I'd earned, eyes that looked clearer, more present than they had in years. 60 years old. Starting over. Not a tragedy, but a gift. Matthew appeared in the doorway, watching me with a smile. "What are you thinking about? You look like you're miles away." I turned to him, the vase of wildflowers between us. "I was just thinking that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "And is this a good beginning?" I looked around at my kitchen, my home. This man who had entered my life in the most unexpected way. At the flowers that symbolized a kind of beauty I was only now learning to see in myself. "Yes," I said softly. "I think it might be the best one yet." Later that night, we sat on the porch together, watching the stars come out, one by one. The night was clear, the moon a slim crescent. "You know," Matthew said, his voice gentle in the darkness, "what happened with the shampoo? It could have destroyed you, made you bitter, but instead it woke you up." I considered his words, feeling their truth settle in me. And I don't plan on going back to sleep. In the quiet that followed, with the night air around us and the city lights below, I felt a certainty I hadn't expected to feel again at my age. Not that everything would be perfect or easy. Not that there wouldn't be more pain or challenges ahead. But I was strong enough to face whatever came. That I deserved to be seen, to be heard, to take up space in the world. That my story wasn't over. It was just turning to a new chapter. And this chapter, I decided, watching a shooting star trace its brief, brilliant path across the night sky, would be the one where I finally became the main character in my own life. Not defined by a marriage or a scandal or even by the love of a good man, but by my own courage to begin again. By my willingness to step into the unknown with hope instead of fear. By the simple revolutionary act of choosing myself. As I sat there under the stars with Matthew's hand in mine, I thought of that blonde hair in the shower, so small, so insignificant. How strange that something so tiny could change the course of a life. Could wake someone from a sleep they didn't even know they were in. I thought of Cynthia, who had seen me at my worst and loved me anyway. Of Aisha, who had always told me the truth even when I didn't want to hear it. Of the women who had written to me, finding their own courage in mine. And I realized something that made me smile into the darkness. Sometimes the smallest things can change our lives forever. I have blonde hair. A moment of courage. A hand reaching out when we need it most. Sometimes what looks like an ending is really just life making room for a new beginning. And sometimes, at 60 years old, in a world that often tries to make women like me invisible, the most radical act is simply to refuse to disappear. Thank you so much for listening to this incredible story of courage, betrayal, and rediscovery. Paulina's journey reminds us that it's never too late to stand up for yourself and claim the life you deserve. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring true stories of resilience and transformation. And remember, sometimes the smallest things can lead to the biggest changes. Sometimes what feels like the end is really just the beginning of the most beautiful chapter of your life. Until next time, this has been Stories of Courage. Thank you for listening. At Virtuous Stories, we love you.